what I found interesting is they're refusing to use the SAT test anymore because of its discriminatory effect, but they're open to other tests. So they may look into other standardized tests. What is wrong with the SAT?
The SAT.
Yeah, what would they, in other words, what would they correct? If you're going to come up with a new standardized test to replace the SAT test, how would it be different, would you say? I'd love to hear them answer this question. It's a rhetorical question, but mostly.
Jim, they're dancing on the head of a pin because there is no real desire on the part of the UC administration to have any standardized test that would diminish the ability of the university to make decisions based on race. That's really what's at play here.
Right. The test is all about something being merit-based, very objective and cold, and they don't want it to be merit-based. And that's why they're tossing out the test. They're claiming they're tossing it out because it's discriminating, but what is it about the test that makes it difficult for a black or brown person to do well on it? And I don't think they can point to anything.
Yeah, nothing about the test. Problem is not in the test. Problem is in those who take the test. And they don't want to admit that, even though the faculty, I think, probably agrees with what I just said. But the problem with the standardized test is that you see the problem with the issue is that the University of California, with respect to admissions, is run by the faculty. The faculty are the ones who determine who will be admitted. And the administration has clubbed them over the head. They didn't want to abandon the test, but the administration, Janet Napolitano, convinced them, the faculty that is, that we want to just do this right now because we have to get something that is fair. All of this is code, by the way, to please the Latino caucus in the legislature. That's what's driving this. And so they do away with standardized tests. That gives the admissions people at every campus the ability to say we're looking at students comprehensively based on their extracurricular activities, based on them holistically. Quotes, I'd go crazy with quotes around every word that is significant here. But the administration wants to give the admissions people complete freedom to ignore academic achievement.
Incredible, simply put, but I'm sure so correct. What is next? There's the LSAT test to get into law school, and there's MCAT, I think, is for medical school, right?
Right.
And then I forget what they call it for business school, but I presume you got to get rid of those next. And then there's another one that comes after law school, and it's called the bar exam, the California bar. I would imagine we might as well get rid of the California bar exam.
Well, if they could do all of that, I tell you, they would certainly be happy to do it, because as long as you give the ability to make decisions holistically to the institution, then you have to believe that they will use whatever factors they have to use to please the powers that be. And the powers that be don't give a diddly squat about merit, about accomplishment. Their belief is that as long as the institution reflects the demographics, then that's the objective that they have in mind.
Yeah, that's what they call equity, that everything in the end works out the same as far as these groups. And if they could do it, they would decide, these central planners, they would decide the precise percentage when it comes to doctors. So who gets their MD, who's actually, I should say a license, who actually gets a license to practice medicine or a license to practice law would be decided by the state. And it would be decided in ways that we have the proper percentage based on race of doctors and lawyers.
Yes, yes.
There's no question about that. That's what they want.
That's what they want. And
this is a sickness. These people are, how do you describe this other than a sickness?
Well, there is no word that I can find because it's suicidal for our society. Every profession in their wisdom is going to be tainted. You drive over a bridge and you're going to wonder whether it will collapse because the engineer didn't meet any objective standard. You go see your doctor and you see that certificate on the wall evidencing where he or she went to school. You will ignore it because you don't know whether there is any merit behind it. Every profession would be poisoned, would be tainted because of the suspicion that the person who is there did not get there through any recognized standard.
And by the way, this affirmative action that we're talking about, or achieving equity, it's been around for a long time. We're talking at least 40 years. It was being practiced at the time that I applied for college in 1984, 1985, when I applied for law school in 1989, when I joined a law firm in 1992. I can tell you two anecdotal stories from the law firm. I was on the hiring committee as a young associate, and we had two stacks for the resumes. One was for non-minority, and the other was for minority. So we had a minority stack of resumes. We were practicing affirmative action at a major Los Angeles law firm with no proof that we had previously discriminated. I'll never forget, there was an application from someone who was from Brazil. And the question arose, okay, Brazil, does she go in the minority stack or not? Mm-hmm. And people said, yeah, I think she does. Okay, put the Brazilian in the minority stack. She had gone to Columbia Law School because her probably comes from a wealthy family. She was put in the minority stack. Last thing I'll tell you anecdotally and then get your comment. We had 30 first-year lawyers, of which, and my numbers are not going to be 100% correct, but they're close enough. 6 African-American of the 30. We had 5 people fail the bar of the 30. All 5 of them were African-American. So that's affirmative action at work and at practice, not being concerned about the underlying person and assuring that that person is getting the proper schooling and training. It's just all about the numbers at the end.
Yeah. Well, I saw this as a regent, and the frustration that I had, Jim, was that I'll go back to your original question of how do I reconcile opposing this affirmative action? The basis of my existence is that C that was on my birth certificate. When I was born in 1939 in Leesville, Louisiana, the heart of Jim Crow, there was a C on my birth certificate placed there by my government. That C wasn't for Connerly, it was for colored. And as a colored child, I was presumed to be inferior. I had a place in my society that had been predetermined, and it determined where I would go to school, what my rights would be, who I could marry based on race, where I could eat a hamburger, where I could sit in the theater when my friends and I on Saturday went to the Saturday matinee, all of this would be predetermined, based on that C on my birth certificate, the presumption of my inferiority. And affirmative action takes that presumption and translates it into the law, into policy. So I was opposing that presumption of inferiority. Black people, in quotes, can reach that bar if you demand it. If you say, here's the standard, we can meet that standard. If you don't believe that we can, you are the racist, not me.